falls down like a soft-spoken prayer on every quiet village from Portland up to Prescott way up there. And though the mills have shuttered and the war feels cold again, still a candle glows in every window for the hearts of hurting men. Children watch the waves of winter rolling hard upon the shore, wondering what the future holds if hope still lives here anymore. But in the hush of frozen pine, God whispers through the pain, I know the storm you're walking through, I'll make a way again. It's a Maine Christmas under long December skies, where the love of God surrounds us like the lights on coastal pines. And though our weary hands are trembling and our burdens feel like chains, Christmas still is beautiful for the suffering souls of Maine. Yes, we're held by God Almighty, and He's guiding through the night. He is carving out a pathway by His everlasting light. Dust in the fields, rotting the beams, years in your pocket but none in your dreams. Same tired eyes, same tired plans, a fire in your chest but no place to land. Steps on a road that never bends, they smile when you lose, they wait for the end. Hope slips away, soft as the rain. The wheel keeps turning, but it don't change a thing. Whatever you want, but the path just folds. Speak your truth, but the air stays cold. They dig in deep, they won't feel the flame. You will never, never break that chain. Never break that chain. Lips full of salt, eyes full of gray. Don't reach too high, they always say. Your hands are young, your thoughts are wild, but time here runs like a fatherless child. The roots are thick, the roots are proud. They drink the sky, they choke the ground. You scream in waves, you break in vain. Still they whisper, keep things the same. Run if you want, but the path just folds. Speak your truth, but the air stays cold. They dig in deep, they won't feel the flame. You will never, never break that chain. Never break that chain.
The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride and cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not even attempt. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. That role is easy, but the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those who neither know victory nor defeat.
Born to move, built to stand, freedom forged by working hands. Raise the flag, hold the line. We were made for this time. Got a strong spirit wide. We don't run, we don't hide. We are the stars of freedom, we carry the flame. We fight, we pray, we rise again. God bless the brave, God bless the land. We are the stars, we take a stand. Voices loud, hearts alive. Every stripe, every right. From the fields to city steel, we are truth, we are real. Bound by grace, built to last. We don't fear the storm we pass. We are the stars of freedom, we carry the flame. We fight, we pray, we rise again. God bless the brave, God bless the land. We are the stars, we take a stand.
That's right. That's right. Welcome to it. Welcome to it. It is, in fact, it's enough of that. Enough. We're going to start the show. Thank you. But yes, this is the very first episode of Mainerville. I am soloing this. I will have co-hosts in the future, trying to work this all out so everybody knows when to find us, where to find us. Wouldn't you know, it's a little more difficult than it sounds trying to get X to beam things out. StreamYard makes things seem really easy, but when you're trying to like hijack things with OBS, man, it's a little harder than it looks. Also, we're over here on YouTube. Chat's disabled. I don't know why. If you want to communicate with me, though, you can reply to me over on X or over on Facebook, wherever you see this post letting you know that we're live over here. We will get that ironed out so the next time we go live, you folks can be in the live stream with us. But for now, we are live. It is Christmas Eve, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for being alive. Now, I'd say thank you for being here for the live stream, but rather, thank you for being alive. Now, you might not think that that's too much of a measure, considering you just had Christmas dinner and managed to survive that, right? Well, it is actually pretty astonishing that we're all still alive, considering all the crazy things that went on this year. I'll remind you that we got hit by a giant wave of, like, sun plasm, right? The sun, like, farted all over us. We had a space fart come over us, and that kind of cooked winter for a little bit there. You remember when things got a little warm there in November? Yeah, that was when the solar ejection was hitting our atmosphere and everything got really pretty at night. Yeah, that happened. We didn't die, though. That's pretty cool, right? And then on the other side of that, we had a bunch of wars break out. Somehow Canada hasn't gone to war with us yet, despite all their goofy stuff that's going on up there, though I'm pretty sure they're sending truckers down here to go to war with us. Isn't that interesting, right? We've also got Shanny Blowholes there, Shanabellos, who's handing out licenses to anybody and their brother that shows up here looking to drive a truck, because why not? You look like a trustworthy fellow. Here's a license to travel 2 tons, 4 tons, 10 tons of material down the road at 80 miles an hour. I'm sure nothing will go wrong, right? But that's why I say it's a miracle that we're all alive, okay? I'll remind you, the next time you're going down the 95, make sure that you say your prayers, okay? Thank Jesus that you haven't ended up crossing paths with one of these gentlemen who doesn't understand that you can't pull a U-turn at 80 miles an hour. Amazing, right? Amazing. But I digress. We do have good news. Among the things that are above, being alive, if you will, we have this. The president announced that he's interested in making battleships a thing again. Now, for me and you, we go back to thinking about battleships, like the USS Wisconsin that blasted the side of a mountain off in North Korea, You remember the Temper incident. That's the kind of battleship that come to our mind. However, President Trump has a slightly different idea. Let's listen to what he has to say.
That I have approved a plan for the Navy to begin the construction of 2 brand new, very large, the largest we've ever built, battleships. You used to build the Iowa, the Missouri, the Wisconsin, the Alabama, many others. We had big battleships. These are bigger,
beautiful battleships.
But they will have 100 times the...
That's not me. That's him, by the way. Whatever's going on there's like a bug or something like that in the microphone. Nothing to do with me.
There'll be 100 times the force, the power, and there's never been anything like these ships. These have been under design consideration for a long time, and it started with me in my first term, because I said, why aren't we doing battleships like we used to?
Well, I mean, there's quite a few reasons, Mr. President, but battleships is in a big thing with lots of firepower. Sure, that makes sense.
And these are the best in the world. They'll be the fastest, the biggest, and by far 100 times more powerful than any battleship ever built. So if you look at the Iowa, the Missouri, Wisconsin, Alabama, and others, but they were similar in size, some a little bit bigger than the others. But if you take the biggest one, it's 100 times more powerful.
So there you go. That's what the deal with this is. Now, President Trump put out some images. Of course, we went and made sure that AI could bring them to life for us. And this is the Trump class USS Defiant. Now, this doesn't look that big as it's presented right now, it kind of looks like a slightly overgrown cruiser. That's a helicopter in the back over here, if you're wondering. This back here is a helicopter. And so it's not that big as far as battleships go, but I'm sure what we're seeing here is probably one of the lighter ends of it. And those 100 times more powerful machines will be, you know, released for public consumption soon. Like we're going to get pictures of it that actually, correspond with how it'll actually come out, as opposed to these images that appear to be a concept of the machine rather than what is intended to be the finished product. Now you'll see some of the radar scrambling things up here on the top end of the ship here. And I say that because I don't know what I'm talking about. But this stuff up top looks a lot like the Zimwalt's radar deflection angling on it. So it appears to be using some of that logic with it, which makes me a little nervous. I don't know about you. I'm not looking forward to another Zimwalt. But these Trump-class ships appear to be, overgrown cruisers. So we're probably not looking at some spaceship-looking ship that's never going to actually be used in battle because of its ridiculous armaments. Look into the Zimwalt if you ever want a headache on how that thing was supposed to fight. I still today don't understand what the initial idea of the Zimwalt was, other than, what if we made a spaceship, but it doesn't fly? I mean, that seems to be the only logic behind the Zimwalt. But hearing President Trump's call, I decided to go out and put together a proposal to bring Maine into being the Damocles sword, if you will, that comes down on the neck of anybody that causes trouble in the North Atlantic. And so this is Polar Lion. Very simply, it's a strategic opportunity for Maine and national security that involves turning Maine's coastline into a place where we can test autonomous devices, where there's 2 new shipyards, a brand new naval base, by the way. I'm calling that O'Brien's Pride. O'Brien was the naval commander that won the first naval battle of our Revolutionary War before we had an official, United States Navy. Before there was a United States, arguably. So we call that O'Brien's Pride. Okay? Now, where my culture is, like my culture, the millennials and Zoomers and whatnot, this is, it spells OP. Okay? So OP in our culture means overpowered or original poster, which means the original guy that posted. So again, it adds up on both sides. Also, I know that the Navy likes to offer nicknames to places. It's sort of a military thing. So we have Opie now, as opposed to the University of Maine at Presque Isle, I think. So that's called Umpy, right? So now we have Opie down on the coast. Makes sense, right? I'm just going to show you a little bit of Polar Lion's video here. It's not really important, but I think it's cool. I really like this opening. So down here you have the Northern Grumman mantas. If you're not familiar, the manta is intended to stay on the seafloor and monitor for any troublemakers, then surface and dispatch those troublemakers, then go back into hibernation again. It's very scary.
This is Polar Lion, a strategic, federally aligned proposal to reinforce America's maritime dominance, placing Maine at the forefront of national security and economic renewal. This initiative harnesses Maine's world-class shipbuilding tradition, deep water ports, and prime geographic position.
So what this means is that the Arctic obviously is going to become a very contested zone. That's why we need to get our hands on top of Greenland, okay? Either we become a very, very tight ally with them in that they don't breathe or fart without notifying us, or we bring them in as a 51st state, one or the other. There's no other option here, because if you look at the top of the Earth, right? A lot of people forget this, that the Earth is a sphere. And so there's more to it than this part of the Earth. So on top of the Earth, when you zoom in and take a look at that old polar ice cap, well, Russia's only a hop, skip, and a jump from being on Europe's doorstep. I know they're connected already, but because Russia, ate Siberia, that whole opposite side of Canada, on the opposite side of the world. Remember how people would talk about like digging a hole to China? Little more literal than you might think. So if you drew a straight line over from, Canada, right over, you'd be in the middle of, the Russian Arctic Circle, Siberia, the top end of Russia. And so that That's bad, okay? So again, China, being an ally of Russia, can also stage up there. And that's why we have so much menace up in the North Atlantic, okay? Because they don't have to sail around anything to do that. They just have to go up to where these ports are up in the Arctic Circle for Siberia there, the Arctic naval bases, and just stage whatever they want up there. Completely, again, within their territory to do so, but we're not on the other end of that doing any of it, right? The best we have is, I think, Portsmouth, right? Portsmouth Naval Yard is like the closest thing we have anything, laterally closest to any type of response that would matter. We could send the main Coast Guard out, but ultimately they're limited by the jurisdiction of our waters. They can't really answer anything that's much beyond that. So, God forbid Canada ends up saying, well, we're better friends with China than we are with you, so we're just going to let you guys figure out your problems. So that means we have that layer of defense completely lost because they've decided to go the Switzerland route, right? Which isn't off the table because we're not great friends with Canada at the moment, and they're kind of relying on China for everything in the absence of us. So I'm not questioning President Trump's deal here. I'm just explaining what logic went into my brain as I was trying to figure out what all we needed here. So we'll go back up here. So forget all of like that high flying cool stuff, right? You're going to show you all this neat stuff. This is what we can do. This is what we can blow up. Let's get into the brass tacks of what it's actually going to cost the taxpayers of the United States, which, includes Maine. So here we have it. This is supposed to take place over 20 years. So these numbers seem pretty large, but again, spread out over 20 years, they're not that big of an expenditure in that time frame, but I can understand dropping, $8 billion on something in 1 year is like, wow, a lot. So here we go. What we need to do is spend $8 billion on acquiring the initial high capacity vessels. So it would cost around $8 billion to build, I believe, 4 of these things, somewhere around there. Most of that is creating the weaponry for them. So as I understand it, this is a merger of the Arsenal ship that President Trump was talking about, which was essentially a floating missile battery. It was just missile front to back, stem to stern, bow to stern. I think that's how it goes. Just missiles all over the place. So the Arsenal ship is probably not a great idea because once it takes one hit, that's it for everything. It goes up like a Roman candle. So not exactly a great, awesome thing to send into China, who has all these missiles pointed at us already. So these high capability vessels, though, would be more in line with the Trump class, this upgraded version that has a lot of armaments, but also a lot of deterrent armaments that, prevent things from colliding with it, as opposed to just shooting missiles as much as you can before you run out of missiles and have to go away. Again, I'm not questioning the logic here. I'm just trying to explain what we're dealing with, that these ships are, yes, the largest, most powerful ships in the battleship class that we put together, certainly. But they are layered armaments. They're not one simple big gun, go boom kind of thing. There's a lot of things going into it. I've heard talk they're going to put a railgun on this thing too. So, I mean, it's going to have an amazing power plant if they're going to do that. At least 2 nuclear reactors on board. So that's expensive. So these would be $4 billion for those Arsenal ships we were talking about. The reason why I used Arsenal ships, because I haven't heard that they've scrapped that. Okay? I haven't heard that they've scrapped that. So I don't know. I think the Arsenal ship will be part of the Golden Fleet. I can't imagine them passing up on the opportunity to scare the pants off of Russia and China with this thing that just... If you can imagine a porcupine at sea, this is what the Arsenal ship is. Just every direction possible aside from into the water, it's firing missiles. There's just no vector that it can't hit above surface. So... yeah, I'm not questioning the logic. It is what it is. So this would be $800 million for a patrol and support fleet. Now, when you hear patrol and support, you're thinking to yourself, the Coast Guard. That too, but also these unmanned vessels that are able to run 24/7 in their small little rubber dinghies. They don't need to be these big, powerful ships that can cut through the deep water. They just need to be out there, and because they don't have sailors on them, we don't need to worry about those sailors getting shook up. Having a bad time in the head, if you will. So these ships can be out there and just doing their thing, these little boats floating around, waiting for trouble, doing long range scans, looking for signals, that sort of thing. And when trouble does show up, boom, they're there to handle it. These support fleets, again, another unmanned fleet of ships that would be necessary to, patrol the fishing lanes. We hear all the time that we have Canadian ships coming in here, okay? Canadian fishing vessels that break through our international waters, into our national waters, and are fishing in the Gulf of Maine. We don't like that. We're not on good terms with Canada. We don't need them stealing our stuff. Far be it from us to do anything about it unless we actually get serious about it, like this stuff. These unmanned vessels would be able to route those guys out of here. So when they show up, these little rubber dinghy boats that are unmanned vessels are equipped with weaponry to deal with them. And that's the point, is that we want to make sure that it's vitally clear to our enemies and to our allies where the boundaries are, where we're okay with this kind of stuff. Because believe it or not, China is working on fishing vessels that are military vessels disguised, okay? So you see one of those dorky wooden Chinese fishing vessels is just usually littering any coastline near China. That thing is actually got a bottom built into it to hold like 12, 13 soldiers. It's also got machine guns built into it. It's also got the ability to shoot torpedoes. That's not a fishing vessel, but it's disguised to look like one. Now, with Canada working so closely with China, it's not too hard to imagine that one of these lonely Canadian fishing vessels might be armed to the teeth to do some damage to the good old state of Maine. Anyway, the other part of this would be $300 million for an autonomous testing zone. Now, I showed you the Manta. There are other devices that DARPA is working on now that'll do similar things, but also have sort of a target choosing apparatus to them. And they require a place to test this stuff. As far as I'm concerned, the muddy coast of Maine is the best place to do that, because if you can make this stuff work and all that mud and soot and all that nasty stuff, silt, that's coming down out of here all the time, every time the tide goes out, well, guess what? It'll work anywhere else in the world too. So now here's the other end. We have $600 million for coastal surveillance upgrades. Now that seems like a lot, right? Well, this is actually more to deal with this underwater sensor system. It's brand new from DARPA, and it's a sensor system that acts like a, you remember the submarine nets that we used to have? I think Belfast still has their submarine net. But these were pretty big in the Cold War at stopping these submarines from coming up into the bays and rivers and things like that, and just hanging out and absorbing, information, catching radio waves, military communication that's traveling over the airwaves, that kind of stuff. Now, on the other side of that, here in the future, kind of the same logic has been applied, but without a physical net per se. These are linked sensors that listen for disturbances in the water. They listen for disturbances in the ground. If there's something moving on very close to the seafloor, it listens for that. It listens for signals. It listens for actual sounds, that sort of thing. And so it acts as a very early warning system that has its own unmanned drones hooked to it in order to verify what's going on. So when one of these sensors hears something, it dispatches a drone that goes out and looks at what's causing the trouble. Excuse me. Gotta love Christmas dinner starts biting you back, right? Gotta love it. So over here now, we have $2 billion phased for 2 new shipyards. Now, one of these shipyards will be down in Portland. We're adding this into another one in here. And what this will be is totally committed to repairs. This new shipyard will be completely committed to repairs. That's what it does. You bring those ships in of any type, and we'll have them back out in no time. But it's totally dedicated to repairs. That way it's not occupied by a construction when we have like a blaring hole in the side of something because of, stuff going sideways in Taiwan or stuff going sideways off the coast of Greenland. How about that? So the other shipyard would be up in that Rogue City. That is the proposed city I put out there, the Freedom City. The proposal talks about a naval base, but I finally have a clear idea of what that would be like now. And so The shipyard would be integrated into this $2 billion O'Brien's Pride naval base. Okay. Now, as I said before, O'Brien is the guy that won the first naval battle right off the coast of Machiasport. And so it matters about building this base there because we're trying to revitalize that revolutionary attitude, that frontiersman attitude about all of this. So O'Brien's Pride is kind of that attitude about this. It's a revitalization of just what we're doing here in the United States. O'Brien believed so much in it that he went to war with his own Navy, you know, the British Navy over this, right? So, and also it's just the base itself would have the shipyard built into it. This one would be a development shipyard, meaning experimental vessels would come out of there. This way we can secure that space because it's on a naval base. You don't have dudes that aren't supposed to be there stopping by to do a news report like you do over at Bath Iron Works. Not that Bath is letting people take a look at all this top secret stuff. Don't worry. But this offers a way higher level of security so that vessels that are really like edge tech, some really next generation stuff, can be built here relatively securely. Given that it's Maine, if you're flying your satellite, your spy satellites over Maine, it's a little obvious what you're doing. It's not like it's just stuff that's circulating around the middle like Virginia and stuff like that and over in California, wherever they're building them. It's not like that. If you go and move your satellite up to spy on Maine, it's going to be pretty obvious to everybody watching what you're doing. So we're going to know when they're looking. I'm not making this part public. If you're watching this live stream, you're probably going to be one of the few people that ever hear about this. But I do believe that O'Brien's Pride should have a 6-bay submarine hangar built into it. This way, all of the East Coast submarines, nuclear submarines we have, can come take refuge up in Maine and then stage a very devastating answer to whatever aggression has been paid to us. Okay? So that's that. But that's how this stuff goes. Now, for Mainers, what we'll have to commit to this is $700 million in phased matching funds. Now, this isn't $700 million in one go. Spread out over 20 years because of the development and how we have to prepare the land, surveying, all that jazz. Most likely, some eminent domain, that's the word. Most likely, some of that's going to be part of that $700 million. So that's what it is. So that's Maine's obligation on the high end of this. That's really high end on this. It may not be that high, but I like to go over the top. That way, if it is lower, we don't have to worry about it. But largely, what this is meant to do is make sure that Maine is the forefront of maritime development. So if anything goes wrong on the East Coast, send your boat up to Maine. If you're looking for a new boat, have it built up at O'Brien's Pride, the secured shipyard, okay? Then you've got Rockland that should be building unmanned vessels as well. I think that's going to go a little bit easier for a private company to do rather than the United States government having sanctioned this. So I would like to put that idea out that it should be a private company that develops these unmanned vehicles. Maybe Northrop Grumman will set up in Rockland, but Rockland's a good place for it. Again, another place that's high traffic, a lot of people around, so that way you have a lot of ability to test this stuff in a friendly environment rather than having to sneak it around in unfriendly environments. So, but that's Polar Lion, okay? I just wanted to get that off my chest because I'm really excited about this stuff. I really am. I really want to see Maine achieve glory. If you don't know, we've never had a boom here. We've never had an economic boom in this state, ever. Go back and look through the history. Never, ever have we had an economic boom. It's just been blip, 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 just a slow growth, almost non-existent growth at this point. But we are a very rural state, and so we don't get a lot of opportunities that other states probably do. And so the chance at glory, like the history-making kind of glory, has kind of washed over Maine. It's not really included us. You see places like New York and New Jersey who have great claims to fame in industry as well as entertainment. And then you have Maine, where like even the Stephen King movies weren't filmed here, you know? If you don't know, it's really expensive to film in Maine. So Murder, She Wrote is filmed in Rhode Island, not in Maine. Almost everything that has to do with us that's in a movie, not filmed here. It's too expensive. Too many licenses, too many forbade actions, you know? So, but speaking of people who are used to TV, here's President Trump talking to a child about what's going on for Christmas.
What would you like Santa to bring?
Not cool.
Not coal. No, you don't want coal. Well, coal is, you mean clean, beautiful coal. I had to do that, I'm sorry. No, coal
He's
is
not sorry.
clean and beautiful. Please remember that at all costs. But you don't want clean, beautiful coal, right?
Nah, the kid doesn't want clean, beautiful coal. They want like one of those Fortnite V-Buck things. That's what they want, so they can get their favorite skin. Don't worry about toys. Don't worry about toys. They just want the Fortnite thing. Think about what you will, but they just want the Fortnite thing. Now, we did have Chuck Ellis over at the Muddy Waters podcast interview Lauren LePage, okay? And so here's a little bit of excerpt from it. Now, it leads into the next thing I want to talk about, but this is a little bit of illumination maybe for people, but I don't think anybody's really new to this concept of, let's let Lauren explain.
Can you imagine what the makeup of the state house would be if mainstream media was just neutral?
Oh my gosh.
Like, can
Right.
you imagine
Yeah.
how successful Republicans would be in this state if mainstream media was just neutral? Like, truly unbiased news. And tell me
Yeah.
that there wouldn't be Republican majorities across the street. I mean, the impact of the media in this state, the coordinated effort to undermine and suppress conservative messaging is stunning. I mean, it is stunning.
So she's not wrong. I'm not sure it's news to anybody, though, but it does lead into what Steve had to say about this. So let's check it out. This is Steve Robinson, by the way, in case for some reason you're not familiar with this guy. Probably the coolest guy around, really, but let's check him out.
Wire. Most of you are probably normal people getting ready for the Christmas Eve celebrations, but I'm a crazy person and I'm losing my mind this morning because the Bangor Daily News is actually taking credit for the Gateway Community Services reporting. This is reporting that I've been working on for 9 months, and we were out on a limb reporting on this. No other outlet in the state would report on it. Even politicians, Republican politicians, with the exception of Assistant Majority Leader Matt Harrington, wouldn't even comment on this story. Every single word that we reported back in March has held up. It's all true. The facts haven't changed. It's just there's national media scrutiny, and now Janet Mills is running for office, and all the little peons working for her, they think that their paycheck is tied to Janet Mills' political future. With all the national attention, they've decided that, well, geez,
God, jump scares, right? Man, you're just enjoying a video of Steve Robinson talking about the news out in the snow, and all of a sudden that demon Shanny Blowholes shows up and just scares the bejesus out of you, right? I felt the soul leave me for a second there. Gosh.
maybe there is some fraud happening here. We should cut off funding and investigate and see what's going on.
There should be a law against just flashing old women at you. Ugh. Like, we need a little warning down at the bottom, Steve, when you're going to hit us like that, man. This is awful. Like, even Jan wasn't ready for that. Like, look at that. I don't know. Did they give her, like, some kind of lemon lime juice before they started filming this? I also like that she's wearing a Maine necklace, just, you know, because she cares, I guess. And you wear your necklace on top of your tracksuit jacket because that's the fashion, right? Worked for Mr. T.
It's not something I just discovered this month or this year.
That's weird. That's like a signal, right? That's a stop asking about this question if you like being paid. You know, if you like your job, stop asking these questions. I wasn't prepared for that. That's a signal. That's a signal of let's just take that back for a second, right?
It's not something I just discovered this month or this year.
Yeah, that was the stop asking questions look right there. That was the stop asking questions or you might find yourself Seth Blacked. Remember Seth Black? They don't want you to remember Seth Black.
So the Bangor Daily News finally writes a story about it. We're like 9-10 months into this thing, and the Bangor Daily News writes a story about it, and they put a note at the top of their story saying, "We were the first to report it." That's just a lie. Why are you lying? Why can't you just say, as first reported by the Maine Wire? We do it all the time. The last time the Bangor Daily News broke an interesting story, I think it was back when Aaron Fries had an affair and the jilted lover called them and just gave them the story. That really was the last time there was something interesting in the Bangor Daily News that I wanted to read.
Wow. A lot of weird stuff going on with those Democrats, huh? A lot of weird stuff.
When we reported on it, we just said, yeah, as first reported by the Bangor Daily News. What is the big deal with that? Why can't they, summon themselves to do something like that? It's just mind-boggling to me. But then you have to consider, of course, that this is the same outlet that got $2.4 million in no-bid contracts from the Mills administration and never disclosed it. Never disclosed it. Even as they were writing about things that the contract concerned. They're a public affairs company with a newspaper arm pretending to be involved in news, but they're taking money from the Mills administration to advance a political agenda. But now I was willing to just tolerate what they were doing. Now they've crossed the line. In taking credit for work that the Maine Wire has done, they've crossed the line. So I'm going to worry about this in the new year. I'm going to take some time, spend some, open some Christmas presents and eat some ham or whatever. But next year, I think it's time to get a little bit more aggressive.
So, just so you guys understand, this is a tactic. What Bangor Daily News is doing is a tactic I learned from a Berkeley political science major. Okay. Now, this guy, I used to stream with him. He taught me a lot about how to set people off in order to farm content out of them. And so this is what they're trying to do, is they're trying to piss off Steve to the point where he'll react in a way that they can report on, that they can then turn him into the villain, the aggressor, the person who is out of line. That's the whole tactic here. It's not that Steve's unaware of that, right? But that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to talk to you, trying to get you to talk about them, not the fraud. That's the tactic here. We want to make sure that we are talking about the fraud rather than this tactic, but they're trying to switch that up and get us talking about them rather than the Somalis that have funded 2 wars with our tax dollars. I seem to remember the Democrats just having a horrible time with Donald Rumsfeld reporting that we had lost $3 trillion from the Pentagon. I know that's a bad thing, but for some reason, losing $2 billion or more to wars in jabroni land just seems normal, I guess. That's just the thing you do, right? That's just the thing you do.
And right now, the idea I'm kicking around is anybody who cancels advertising with the Bangor Daily News, the Maine Wire, and the Robinson Report will give you 2x the impressions, 2x the views on your advertising for a steep discount. Anybody who can prove to me that they pulled money from the Bangor Daily News or canceled a contract with Pulse Marketing, their public affairs company, I will give you double the attention, double the views, and double the value for your money. Again, anybody who pulls advertising from the Bangor Daily News will give you double the value for a steep discount. That's what I think we're going to do in January, because you know what? I'm sick and tired of these government propaganda morons pretending like they're journalists. That's what we're going to do next year. Have a Merry Christmas, everybody, and a Merry Christmas to Decca DeLocke. Good luck with that House Oversight investigation.
What a perfect face to pause on, right? Well, that's the thing, is that if you don't know, Decca DeLocke, until now, I didn't know how to pronounce her name. It was a very bizarre thing, and I've thought about saying it out loud, but then I was worried I might summon a demon. But anyway, Decca DeLocke is under oversight investigation. Now, this was brought to my attention by Mr. Bobby Charles. Now, we'll drop in and take a listen to what Bobby had to say on this.
Hi, friends. It's Bobby Charles, and I know we're in the Christmas season, but I want to come to you tonight with something very important. Congressional investigators are now issuing letters and ultimately subpoenas, probably to the Department of Justice and to the Treasury Department, very specifically seeking suspicious transaction reports against organizations in Maine run by the Somalis in particular, and by Decca DeLocke specifically, this legislator who 6 months ago I was calling out, and you with our petition were calling out, and even before that, Steve Robinson at The Wire was calling out. What are they doing? They're looking for systemic Medicaid fraud. And what they're seeing is, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. What they're seeing is something similar in Maine to what we saw in Minnesota. Listen, the truth is the truth is the truth, and we have to hunt it down and we have to find it. As your governor, I will be hunting for it every day. And by the way, we will find where all those dollars went, and when we can get them back and give them back to the taxpayer, we will.
Don't plan on that part. I know that Bobby wants to see this repatriation thing and have people repaid and things like that's not going to happen. They sank that into the war already. It's gone. It went up in bullets and gunfire and all the other jazz. It's gone. I'm sorry. I know that's a very pessimistic thing to say, and you're not going to get these people to repay it. They're just going to go back to Somalia and disappear, and you're never going to hear from them again. They'll change their name to something else you can't pronounce, and that'll be the end of it. And I'm sorry to seem so dark about that, but that's just the reality. There's just no way to get these people to repay $2 billion. Like that's almost the entire GDP of Somalia. So it's just not going to happen. It's just not. But again, the effort is nice to see this answered and dealt with and some type of acknowledgement that the taxpayer was taken for a ride here. But the reality is the Democrats let that money fly out and it's never coming back. There's just no way to do it. But we did have Ben Midgley weigh in on this as well. Ben had some pretty important things to say about this. I am going to back down his volume just a little bit because Ben was pretty into the microphone on this one. So,
you know, I don't like having to post a video so close to Christmas, but for weeks we've been saying it, and now the Mills administration has finally admitted it. There are credible welfare fraud allegations happening right here in Maine, just like we saw explode in Minnesota. And here's the problem. They have known about this for years, and now they're admitting it. They're only acting now because the spotlight is on them, and that is unacceptable. We cannot stop with one case or one press release. At this point, we need a full, robust investigation across all Medicaid programs, and we need strong protections for whistleblowers. It's hard for people to speak up when you've got the Democrats breathing down your neck. So if you've got the courage to speak up, you need protections. And it's high time the state realizes that taxpayer money is not monopoly money. Fraud is a crime, and Maine people deserve the truth.
Now, this is an important thing that he mentioned here about this whole situation with investigating these departments and then having protections for whistleblowers. Believe it or not, every single public institution and just about every single charity in Maine is totally populated by hard leftist Democrats. I'm not even kidding you. I am someone who ended up in the system due to an illness, and I am constantly aghast with how many just hard radical leftists that I continue to run into at every single level of these public run institutions. Every single office, everybody. This has leaked over into private institutions that have to deal with these public institutions because the public institution has put pressure on the private institution to remove Republican, conservative, or otherwise right of center thinkers from their offices. This is why wherever you go, like PCHC, Northern Lights, any of the Maine Health, they're all totally populated by leftists of all walks of life, mind you, but they're all totally populated because, again, they've quietly said, if you want to get paid, you're going to get rid of that guy who's saying these things, okay? And that guy gets shuffled out quietly. He either finds an office where he has no more power anymore, or he's just quietly removed because of some violation from 20 years ago that no one's allowed to talk about. And that's what you're looking at. So when they call for this investigation, the reality is that's going to be like pulling teeth. That's a needle in a haystack. We already have affidavits. We already have information requests. We already have disclosure requests. All of that's already in play, and Shanna Bellows and Mills administration are continuing to block that, slow it down, to just bog it down until the election. That way they don't have to answer anything. Remember those ballots that just showed up with a bag of Humpty Dumpty? Remember that? Do you remember that? Well, guess what? Nobody knows anything about that. Apparently, there was some guy at Amazon that somehow broke both boxes open at the same time and whoopsie-cadoodled some marked ballots, right? Big red tape that says election ballots in with somebody's Humpty Dumpty potato chips. Just think about that for a minute, okay? Just try to process the line of thinking that goes into even accepting that truth, let alone imagining that, the truth, by the way, accepting that line, let alone the reality of that actually happening in front of somebody. Like, oh, I got these ballots, I've got these Humpty Dumpty potato chips. Obviously, they're going to the same place. No. Someone in China got confused, right? And that's what happened because these bills were made in China. And you and I both know that that's where that's coming from. We both know that Janet Mills' administration is neck deep in CCP. Her brother's practically owned by them. Where do you think these solar power panels come from, by the way? We'll talk about those in a later episode because, believe it or not, they have kill switches that the Chinese can activate that'll light those things on fire and invert the electricity back into the grid that they're feeding to cook that grid as well. Yeah, that's a real thing. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. There was an actual report about this way back in September about it. Real deal. Out in Arizona, they found all of these solar power panels that have remote kill switches that can be accessed and turned to invert the power supply that they're feeding to bake the grid they're connected to. And by bake, I mean literally burn it up. If you didn't hate the Democrats by now, I don't know what to tell you. But we've got more great news about the Democrats here. This comes from the Unquirer. Now, I make the mistake of calling him the Uniquer because I can't read. So if you make the mistake that I have and started calling them the Uniquer, he is the Unquirer. Like Inquirer, but okay? Silly me.
Here in Minnesota, a local realtor reached out to me to tell me about another way that Somalians are scamming Minnesotans out of their taxpayer dollars. In her community alone, Somalians have bought up over 455 homes. They buy these homes, claiming they're turning these homes into home health care centers. She says the way we know Somalians have bought these homes is because all of a sudden, extremely nice cars start showing up. Mercedes, BMWs, the nicest cars parked in the driveway.
How about that?
And she said, by law, the state will not come out and inspect these homes and make sure these homes even have clients living in these homes. She also said, as a realtor, she cannot disclose to people wanting to buy homes in this neighborhood that Somalians have bought that home and they're using that as a home health care center. She said these homes can even take people in who've just been released from jail, and the neighborhood does not need to know about this. But she says many of these homes do not even have clients in them. But the state is writing them checks every month for the clients that the Somalians say are in these homes.
Right.
And these Somalians are making millions of dollars off of these homes every year.
So what happened is that we have a high trust society, right? Or well, rather we did. So a lot of these laws were born out of the idea of honor. A very European style of honor, by the way, that doesn't usually exist outside of places that don't have a lot of heavy European influence, such as the United States, or perhaps parts of Asia, like South Korea and Japan. This concept of honor requires a person to self-police. So, yes, the system is rife for abuse because we simply believe that people in our own nation grew up with a set morality, so we could expect certain behaviors out of them when we made these laws. However, people from away, having no other desire than to milk us for cash, well, they find these little nooks and crannies and then they exploit them to their maximum. Thus, we have whole neighborhoods that are now owned by Somalis in Minnesota that are completely empty or chock full of fresh criminals. Nobody can know because they're home health care centers, and for whatever reason, you can't inspect those. I would think of all the places you should be inspecting would be a home health care center, right? Because, things can go a little sideways when only one or two people are taking care of a person, and as we've learned, that usually doesn't mean that that's happening, good things are happening to that person being cared for. But as we found out in this video alone, there might not even be a person being cared for in there, and the house just may be vacant, and then Minnesota is writing a check for the phantom clients that are inside these places. Just take a minute and try to calculate the stupidity in all of this, the wanton desire to obliterate normalcy. Because now comes through regulations that are going to make it harder for people who do genuinely want to care for people in their home to do so. This is what happens when we just open the door and let anybody in here. This is why the Hart-Celler Act needs to be repealed. We need to start putting guidelines on the nations that can send us people, because guess what? Somalians do not possess the same morality as Americans, as Mainers. They simply don't. They see an exploit and they take it. You and I, we see an exploit and we say, hey, there's a hole there that you need to fill. And the people with that hole go, wow, you're right. Let's fill that hole. Completely different set of morals, okay? You and I, we are only cattle for these Somalis to pull money out of to fund their jabroni land wars, okay? It doesn't matter. To you and me, it does not matter if Somali's at peace or not. It has nothing to do with us. It never did. It never will after we wipe our hands of this mess. And I say wipe our hands because it is a stain. They've stained our morality. Now we will be more careful about who we help as a group, okay? You as an individual make your own decisions. But as a group, our nation, and in particular Maine, is going to be much more hard-hearted toward helping anybody, let alone Somalis, okay? So this has gone and backfired completely on these people. Now again, Bobby Charles mentioned about trying to get this cash back. It's not going to happen. Like I said, these people will be returned, they'll disappear, they'll face no true consequences to any of this because being international criminals, there's really no way to punish them because their home nation isn't going to do it. This is heroism to them. They've funded wars for them. They're not going to punish these people. They're great heroes. Decca Delac, or whatever her name is there. Sorry if your furniture started levitating. But, you know, that lady, she goes over there and she's greeted as some kind of goddess, as a royalty. They love her because she's piling cash into the place. There's going to be no punishment for these people. It's just how it goes. You just have to get used to that. But what you have to remember is that that door that they leave through is going to be slammed and locked shut so hard, nobody is coming back through it again. And that has to be the rule. As angry and as evil as that sounds, we have to realize that Mainers themselves are on the decline. Think about this. We have closed 9 birthing centers since 2019. And these aren't far-flung weirdo birthing centers that are out in TR 111. These are birthing centers in Holton, in Belfast, in Waterville. These are places that have concentrated legacy populations that are not producing enough children to even keep an OBGYN on staff. That's a person that investigates the lady parts, if you don't know, okay? So try to calculate that versus Shanabello's bending over backwards to make sure the Somalis are here, okay? The Democrats bending over backwards to protect the Somalis. Think about that. Why is that happening? Why are they doing this? Why would they care? That's right. They need a slave class. That's why all these Democrats are doing this, because this is the slave class. These people are illegals, right? They're here not legally. They're here against the law of the land. And thus, if they screw up at all, they're gone. So that means the Democrats have them. If they say, get in the mines or you're going home, guess who's going in the mines? That's a slave class. That's what they have. And I'll give you a good example of this. Down in Lewiston, where a great deal of Somali refugees are concentrated, meatpacker prices have meatpacker wages rather, have stagnated. They've only gone up 50 cents over the last 8 years. That's ridiculous, right? Versus how the inflation on that product has gone up almost 50% in that time. I think almost 100%. So try to calculate all that, right? Now you understand why they're fighting so hard for this, because they need a slave class. And that's what this is. This is about their pre-brown slave class that they're very happy to drain into the state to replace you and I because we work for too much. That's why you get Republicans every now and then that are like, well, you know, we need immigration from these third world countries. No, you don't. You want your cheap labor. You want your cheap foreign labor that is your slave, because if they don't do what they're told, they lose their fancy house that's better than anything they've ever had at home. They lose all the technology that they don't have access to at home. They lose all the fancy cars that they don't have access to at home. And they lose all the fancy dating opportunities that they don't have at home. That's a lot of stuff to lose out on. Then they go back to the currency of their nation as opposed to the big fat dollar that buys them everything under the sun. Interesting, huh? Interesting. And that's what the Democrats are doing, is they're trying to create a slave class. All these years later, they're back at it again. Democrats enslaving people before the Civil War and after. Who would have ever have guessed? But speaking of these useful idiots, the Enquirer, I almost called them the Uniquer. The Enquirer had a report on Maine Health, and we'll close out the show with this. So, this is a report that's questioning the cutoff on funding for these trans operations.
Such a targeted attack on such a small population.
Equality Maine leaders say gender-affirming care can range from mental health resources to hormone therapies and surgeries. Announced plans to no longer provide Medicare or Medicaid funding to hospitals that provide gender-affirming care to people younger than 19 years old. Now, Maine Health is reassuring patients who receive this care that it will still be available.
Yes, we will continue to destroy healthy human flesh. If you're not familiar, there's a condition called body integrity identity disorder. And why that's important is because body integrity identity disorder is a mental state in which you believe your body needs to be brutally changed in order to accommodate your mental vision of yourself. People with BIID, body integrity identity disorder, believe that if they break their leg and have it cut off, that accomplishes their belief that they are an amputee in their mind. They seek out medical treatment to have their spine shattered in order to put them in a wheelchair for the rest of their lives because their mental state says that they are a paraplegic, okay? This is not gender-affirming care. This is more Mengele Frankensteining of human beings. But that's the end of the show, guys. I got to cut it off here. I got to make sure that my house doesn't freeze up. You know how it is in the winter. So I wish you the best of luck out there, and we'll meet back up again. Hopefully I'll have a co-star then. But as always, guys, Merry Christmas and good luck out there.